Hi, I'm Garbreak1, and this is Midgardia RPG's cool crowdfunding show. Today I have with me Aurelien Laine. How's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. It's good to have you. So you're currently working on Choreo Hall of Adventures, right?
Yep, that's right. So the Cordio of Adventures campaign setting book for 5e D&D.
Okay, cool. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
So it's a Korea-inspired campaign setting. So it's based on medieval Korea. It has a few different items that sets it apart from other campaign settings in the D&D universe. For instance, it's based on animism, so there are no clerics, there are no gods. It's all spirits based, and and it's a brand new world to explore and to discover and have adventures in.
Cool. Uh, so you've got a lot of stuff going on here. I see you've got a shaman class and the five pillars of reality. This is very deeply seeped in traditional Korean mythology, right?
Um, there, I'm somewhere in between. The thing is, uh, all of the actual mythology, all the legends and everything, a lot didn't make it through Japanese occupation, so it's being rediscovered. So there is a lot of new material to dig in, but at the same time, the diversity is not big enough to build a completely new world the way I wanted to do it. So the all the basics are in Korean mythology inspiration, but I did expand a lot with my own stuff. I didn't have a choice; otherwise, it would have been very limited in a sense.
Yeah, which is an unfortunate reality in any country that's been occupied by foreign imperialist power,
Yeah.
including my own as a Canadian. Imperialism destroys a lot, unfortunately. Uh,
It does, and after that, Korea was and it still is very busy becoming a strong power, more than because the culture that you see that is being distributed is a manufactured culture, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
K-pop is very popular, but there's nothing I can do with that in a medieval camping setting, for instance. Whereas everything else that is really deep and interesting and really part of the culture is still very underground. Not enough people know about it.
Yeah, so for a lot of people who have only witnessed like Gangnam Style and like EXO and stuff like that, this will be a very new experience, which is
Yeah,
always interesting. Right,
yeah, because I do dive into things that are part of what is being rediscovered and studied, and those are all the interesting parts. I think the architecture is very interesting. Um, the alcohol making here is very interesting. They have those alcohols called soju, makgeolli. It's fascinating because this is the kind of thing that everybody knew how to make in Korea. So it was not an industry. It was just something that you had at home that you were fermenting for when people would come and visit, right? So everybody knew how to make it, but now it's all in the hands of like big industries, and the tastes and everything are not quite as good as they should be. So there's a lot of things like this that are re-emerging that I'm exploring in the book.
neat. Yeah, we get imported soju out here, and I'm sure it's not quite as good as the authentic stuff, but it's pretty
No.
good. Some of it's peach flavored. That's my favorite.
Mm. Yeah, that's. I think the one you were mentioning is one of those big brands that are
Yeah,
getting more and more popular.
yeah,
And the main the main issue with these large brands is that it's really not good for your health because of the manufacture process. Whereas if you keep the manufacture process the way it was in medieval Korea, well, you'll get a hangover, but it's not going to kill your brain cells.
yeah, yeah. As a Canadian, there's not much Korean influence out here, so most of mine is there's a Korean pizza joint I know that serves bulgogi pizza and
Oh yeah,
traditionally made bulgogi meals and stuff like that, and that's about it. Really good stuff.
yeah,
Big fan. Yeah. Um, so yeah, why don't you tell me about the shaman class? The where was the name? The Mudang?
yeah. The Mudang class.
Mudang. Okay.
So the way it works is that for anybody who wants to become a shaman, there's two ways to do this in game. In reality, there's only one way. But in game, there's two ways: either a spirit descend upon you, a spirit with an objective descend in your body and then tests you a little bit. And once the spirit accepts you as a host shaman, then you're basically a shaman, because through the spirit that's inside of you, you can connect with other spirits and get them to do things for you. The second way that I've created for the book is, excuse me, is you can actually go to a shaman community and go through a ritual to attract a spirit into your body, and then after that, the connection with other spirits is the same process. It just creates a different kind of backstory. It creates a different set of stats. Knowing that here in Korea, being a shaman is well recognized, but initially it is considered to be a curse, because all of a sudden there's all this pain, all these thoughts, all these things that you can do, but you have no idea why. I didn't want all of the people playing, or all the characters that are shamans, to have a traumatic past, because that limits the gameplay a lot. So that's why I created both of them. And so that's the start. And then after that, you have at every level there's different kinds of spirit that you can call onto, and the spirits will take actions for you. So a basic one would be, for instance, go and fetch an ancestor spirit to ask a question about a certain situation. So that's especially relevant when you're doing investigation or anything like this. In combat, you can call like fire spirits or water spirits, and then cast certain spells attached to those spirits, right?
Right.
So those are the basic actions that you can do. It goes further than that, but this is the basic idea. Where it gets interesting is that spirits have their own free will. So in the very beginning, you do have to roll to convince the spirit to do things for you, because you can't just control spirits or anything like this. They will do it or they won't do it, depending if you convince them. And then as you progress, it gets easier and easier. But in the beginning, you still have a certain training process to go through.
Cool. So it's almost like a monster taming. Well, taming is not really the word, but like a
Yeah.
beast mastery kind of thing going on. Is that about right? Or
Um, I would say that it's more of a corporation, in the sense that you have this full list of spirits that you can call on to. Depending on where you are, those spirits will be here or not. It really depends if you have a shrine nearby, or if you have water elements nearby, or if you have anything like this. So first, you have to make sure that this is an area where there is the kind of spirits you're looking for. Second, you will roll to find out if they accept or not. So you won't really tame them. It's more a question of do you want to do this or not? And then the spirits will, oh, okay, sure, or no, and then just go away, right?
negotiating and making
Eh,
deals more so, yeah.
yeah, yeah, more like this. And yeah, exactly. It's more of a negotiations thing.
Well, that's super cool. Definitely different than anything in standard 5e. Uh,
I hope so. It was really difficult trying to find mechanics, and I still need to play test it a few times to make sure that it works, because you can't level up in a way that you do usually in 5e. It's not just that straightforward. So I had to play around with the different ways of what kind of impact your leveling up has on the gameplay, and I really need to make sure that it works properly. But I feel like it's at a point where it's okay. And another thing that can help you also with negotiation is called chesa. So when you do rituals in Korea, shamanic rituals, you need to have donations for the spirits. It could be food, it could be herbs, it could be some more extreme sides. It could be things that are bleeding, which I haven't put in the manuscript yet. I don't know if I want to go that way, but those donations are called jesa, and I integrated that in the gameplay. So in order to improve your chances, you can just do some donations, and often they come in the form of plants or flowers that you either burn or you make tea and drink the tea. So all these things are donations that are connected to the kind of spirits that you're trying to call, and that improve your chances. Because who doesn't like a nice donation, right?
yeah, absolutely. So what inspired you to make to do this setting to make choreo? I think I'm pronouncing
Mm,
that right. I'm not sure. Choreo
yeah,
or yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
The main complication in Korean is that the R doesn't exist. It's a L. So usually, if you see a R and you make a L out of it, it works quite well. But it's somewhere in between. Koryo. It's not
Right.
Golio. It's not Koryo. It's somewhere Koryo.
Yeah.
But
So there's a
so Koryo
commonality
Koryo
with
works.
that is
Yeah, Koryo.
somewhat of a commonality with the with like Japanese. I know has a similar um lack of distinction between the two sounds.
It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the inspiration was I've been living here for there's several things, but I've been living here for 10 years now, and there are two angles to how Korean culture is portrayed internationally, and one of them is it's portrayed by everything that is very popular. So you have movies, dramas, K-pop, and all of those are designed to spread out. It's really something that's been in the works for 15 years, and now there's this formula that works, and you keep seeing it again and again and again in with slightly different variants. Whereas the actual culture that I personally enjoy, I've experienced a lot of the culture here. I took some pen study classes. Excuse me. I took some pen study classes, which is the traditional singing. I took some traditional instrument classes as well. I did a few documentaries as part of my work related to temples and culture, and so there's all these things that I've seen. And I used to work as well with some friends who have a company that teaches about Korean alcohol making. So I've really experienced a lot of all of this, and all these things are not being portrayed enough, that if they were, people would really love it. It's really 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 a good part of the culture. So part of me wanted to expose that somehow, but there are hundreds of books on Korea, so that's not necessarily a market I wanted to get into. But I do game quite often, a lot less these days because it's been so much work to get the book done and everything. But gaming is part of it, and meeting more and more people who game here and who wanted to have something that they can recognize based on where they live, rather than always the same style that is very Tolkien style fantasy. So all of these combines were some of it, but also later on, I'm hoping once my daughter grows up that we get to play together some Dungeons and Dragons. And right now, there's nothing she can recognize herself in. My wife is Korean, so she's mixed Korean and French, and there's nothing she can recognize herself in right now. And I'm hoping with this book that maybe if she wants to play later on, she thinks, "Oh, cool, those people are inspiring to me because I can recognize myself in there." So those are a mixture of bunch of reasons.
Well, hopefully, yeah. That's is quite a lot. Sounds like you've been up to some really interesting stuff over there. So,
Yeah, there is a lot to do. There is a lot to do. It's too hidden in a lot of commercial things on top of it. Something that came up, I think, 2 years ago was last year or 2 years ago was the Hamburg uh, Hamburg renting thing. So basically, Hamburg is the traditional Korean clothing, and then if you come to certain tourist areas, you can rent it for a day, so for 6 hours. And when I first saw it, I thought, "Wow, who wants to have to wear this for 6 hours? Because it's actually kind of bulky. It's not super convenient, and it's everywhere. It's crazy how people love this, and I think the design helps a lot because they made it lighter, they made it easier to move around. But it's amazing how people latched onto that and really really love it. And I'm thinking, okay, if that goes well, I'm sure everything else can really be popular simply by showing it to people and letting them know that it exists.
is that mostly tourists renting that, or locals,
Yeah,
or mostly tourists? All right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
tourists.
that's exactly the kind of thing you would generally want to do as at least when I'm out doing touristy things is immerse yourself in the local culture. Like you don't really want to go fly halfway across the world and go to McDonald's, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, some people do. not me. Yeah, like most of what we get of Korean culture in the West is very, I don't want to say sanitized, but a very commercial kind of thing, like the K-pop groups as you mentioned, or like I don't know. I think I've seen episodes of Iris somewhere, the spy drama. Um,
Yeah.
that's about it. My girlfriend is a Gumiho is relatively popular out here as far as that goes. Um,
Mm.
that's about it, unfortunately. So it's nice to see something going back to the more like medieval era kind of Korean mythology stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, there's so many interesting stuff. It's you will hear people say, "Oh, there is so much diversity, so much this." No, that I had to integrate the diversity because actually in medieval times, it's really hard to know what is Korea, what is Japan, what is China, what is Mongolia, because it keeps moving around all the time. So you can't talk about a geographic area and say, okay, let's say this was Korea, and then okay, one kingdom came in here, then one kingdom, but it keeps moving around all the time. So what I found is that in this area, the what we know of Korean architecture, what we know of Korean culture, it was kind of always very similar, which makes it very limited when you want to have diversity in a campaign setting, right? So there is a lot of very interesting things because people don't know, but then it's also limited at some point. So need to expand upon it and create something new as well,
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
that makes sense.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there's a good amount of stuff to work with, but not as much as you'd like, given the history of the area.
Right.
Rather, tumultuous as it is, and having half of Korea completely unavailable to you probably doesn't help, or half of the Korean
Well,
peninsula rather. But
if you look into the medieval time, all of that is available because the other half was separated in 1953, right?
right,
So everything that's before that, all of that was united. So the records are about all this region, not only about the south of South Korea. When it comes, there is. I have heard that some of the oldest temples are actually in North Korea, simply because North Korea was not bombed as much as South Korea was. So they have some very very old buildings up there, but I guess I already have enough information in writing that this is not going to be missing as much as well, as much as I think it could be if it was
yeah,
any other area really.
yeah. Well, that's good at least. It is unfortunate that we're unable to get good pictures of that kind of thing, but maybe sometime in the future. Uh,
Yeah.
here's hoping. Um, how did what's the tabletop gaming like scene in Korea like? You've mentioned that you've played games with a couple people there. Are there any Korean original games or
So the scene has been growing a lot actually. There are some hardcore Korean gamers that started gaming, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago simply by getting the English books, um, doing some rough translations and then playing between them. That is something I might look into later for a documentary because there's some very interesting stories in that. But yeah, so there is this scene that was very limited, but now it's kind of exploding. One of the reasons why it was limited is because Wizards of the Coast didn't really believe in this market. This market was all about Magic the Gathering, right? Magic the Gathering is huge here. It's really, really huge. So they put all of their marketing efforts towards that. But then there are some English shops that's starting to pop up here and there. One of which I play at quite I played quite often at, um, and those are putting a lot of weight on Wizards of the Coast to try and get more books, to get more events, and now it's starting to crack open. Now it's really getting more popular, and part of it is that all these new shows and podcasts that is international, like Critical Role, Adventure Zone, all of that, it's also reaching the audience here, and now they're starting to think, okay, that's it's not only it's not only accepted to play tabletop games anymore. It's also cool, and once it becomes cool, then things blow up a lot here in Korea. It goes very fast. If one celebrity here start talking about it, then that's it. That's game over. It's gonna go like wildfire.
Yeah,
It hasn't
absolutely.
happened yet, but I have no doubt at some point it's gonna come out.
So, D&D themed K-pop band in the next 5 years.
I wonder what that would look like. I want to see that actually.
Well, you just named them all after the different classes, right? So you got a rogue, barbarian. There are other classes. I swear, those are the two I play. Ranger, paladin, whatever. I'm sure they could make it work. The costume
I
designers and the
think
cape. Sorry, good.
no. So I think if they're gonna go the cosplay route, they will go for online gaming stuff like League of Legends because this is the big thing here. That's the
Right.
huge industry is online gaming. So I don't see Dungeons and Dragons going as far as that, but I wouldn't mind seeing K-pop bands going the cosplay route and see how that looks. That would be fun.
League of Legends did do a K-pop video last year,
Oh
I
yeah.
think. Yeah. Uh, it was all CGI, but it was very very K-pop themed. I don't think it was actually in
Ah, right,
Korean,
right,
but
right.
like
Yeah, yeah, I
yeah,
remember that.
called it KDA or something.
Right.
Yeah, League's not my game, but I know the online gaming scene in Korea is huge.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
somewhat infamously so. Yeah.
Yeah, they have gaming schools.
Really?
So yeah, yeah. So here, if they recognize you as a good player, you're being recruited by a gaming school, and it's you play 12 hours a day to practice for the competition. Which there's a point where it does feel because they're stuck in a chair, no matter how comfortable the chair is. Stuck for 12 hours a day gaming. There's a point, excuse me, as a career where it could be detrimental, I think, because the last champion was a friend of mine worked on a documentary for Blizzard, and it was about the competition here in Korea and about the champion of was it League of Legends or StarCraft? I can't remember. One of those two, but probably StarCraft.
If it was
And
Blizz, it was StarCraft. Yeah.
okay, so they followed him, and then they followed him home, and he's a Finnish guy. And while they were filming in Korea in the schools where those guys are really playing constantly to try and get better, this guy is just chilling out in the sauna or going to walk his dog, and then he's gonna play 1 or 2 or 3 hours a day just because he's trying. And if he doesn't feel like it, it's like, it's not working today. He's just gonna go in nature and it's incredible that this guy who's taking a more natural way of doing it is actually winning.
Yeah.
But here
Well,
they put a lot of money in it.
yeah, there's diminishing returns on that kind of thing. I took my crack at the competitive gaming scene myself many years
Yeah.
ago. Did terribly, got carpal tunnel out of it. Uh, always practice proper wrist safety. That'll screw you. But it's trying to grind through 12 hours a day. You're getting maybe 6 hours effective learning time, and the rest of it is not doing anything for you. You'll probably just pick up bad habits that way. Is what I've learned. But
And a lot of pressure too, because
yeah.
if you train 12 hours a day and in the end you don't make it to the top, it's not good for your mental.
No, that's a lot of burnout right there,
Mm.
and that's not good. What I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but I'm really curious. Like, what age do people start getting recruited into that kind of thing? Like, is it out of
I,
grade 9ish or?
uh, I, I, I don't have the knowledge to answer that question.
All
I know
right,
they're adolescents, so
okay,
probably high school, sometime in high school, and maybe after that a little bit in university. But my knowledge is not good enough to actually give you a proper answer.
all right, that's all good. I appreciate you humoring me on that though. I see that you've got a safe promoting safe play section on the Kickstarter. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the philosophy behind that?
So I wrote I wrote about it a while back actually on my blog. I was amazed when one of my friend, when we went to play together, a friend of mine started DMing one campaign, and the first thing he said was, "This is a non-racist setting," and I just couldn't get it. I didn't get what it meant, right? So I said, "Okay, sure. Well, also, I don't see why not. We never played in a way that was discriminatory, so it's not going to change now." And then 10 minutes into the game, or 10 or 20 minutes into the game, somebody made a joke about one of the dwarf. I think we had a dwarven cleric. I say, "Oh, of course, dwarves, blah, blah, blah," whatever it was. I can't remember. And then right away, the DM said, "No, this is a non-racist setting, so I don't want to hear that kind of jokes." And I didn't realize that actually a lot of the time, sometimes people make jokes, or sometimes people speak in a way that can be discriminatory without knowing it, right? Simply because it's just a game. And I got interested in the subject, and then I started doing research. And the more research I did, the more I found out that actually a lot of people had a bad experience at games. Sometimes it starts in game, and sometimes it's just because the table is not being welcoming, or is playing in a way that is not pleasant. And I thought, well, that doesn't seem right. It's a game. We should all be able to play and enjoy it, right? So yeah, after searching more and more about it, I asked myself how I could make a campaign setting that facilitated safe play and welcoming everyone at a table on equal footing. So I decided to put a few triggers in there, such as, for instance, it is a non-racist setting simply because everybody comes from exactly the same origin. So no matter what kind of race you play, because of the lore that I created in this game, it's impossible to be racist because everybody exactly come from the same place, and it's so embedded in the culture of the people living on this setting that they don't even see discrimination or racism as a possibility. So that's one of the things. The second thing I did is I created a reputation system. So you have negative, neutral, or positive reputation, and depending on where your character is on that spectrum, it can choose different kind of adventures. So the way it works is the Goryo Hall of Adventures is kind of big community, a big inn where you just go in there. There's a job board. You can pick up jobs, and those jobs are basically your adventures. If you choose a negative adventure, you things can go dark and can go pretty nasty. But if you choose a positive reputation adventure, then people will expect you to play following the law, following the rules, and try and be a hero, right? So then, if a DM has the ability to broadcast that at his or her table and say, "Hey, I'm going to play this kind of adventure," then the people sitting at the table already know what kind of game they're in for. If it's something negative, then they know that some dirty stuff might happen, some crazy stuff might happen. Whereas if they're in for a positive adventure, then they feel more confident that it will be a positive experience if that's what they're looking for. So those are the few things I try to integrate in there. But I'm planning a few. I have more ideas, but I need to find people who are willing to speak with me um, about the proper integration and representation of uh, of all sorts of diversity, and this is something I'm working on. I'm trying to find people who can talk to me about how to integrate in an elegant way all sorts of handicaps in the representation within the book, about all sorts of sexual orientations. All of these are things that I want to work on and show a proper integration and proper representation. Mm, but my knowledge on some of the subjects is limited, so I'm still working on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's cool to see that as a base level design consideration, as opposed to something that's tacked on near the end of the process, which is something that we have seen in other RPGs. Not
Mhm.
naming names, but yeah, that's pretty interesting. I have heard people complain that certain elements of base Dungeons and Dragons are improper treatments of mythological things, especially Jewish mythology. Stuff
Mhm.
like liches, phylacteries, and stuff is well, that's not phylacteries are an important Jewish thing, and having that as the essential component of a lich is not great if you're a Jewish player. And
Right.
yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It is quite a challenge. Yeah,
It is because we're still in a very young part of the movement of how can I say, we're at the beginning of a very important movement when it comes to complete integration and towards a world where there's a lot less and if possible no discrimination. So it's very easy to get it wrong. It's very, very easy to get it wrong. So it's really about the work that can be done. And this is not going to be perfect. And it will probably attract a lot of criticism, I'm sure. But if it's one more stone and then somebody comes up and builds on it with even better ideas, then already I'm hoping that I've done something, right? So we'll see how it comes out.
yeah, and hopefully it'll be for the best. Seems like you got a good head on your shoulders and a lot of considerations in the right place. So
Hopefully.
yeah, I got a lot of really nice art here too. Do you want to talk about your art team?
So I'm gonna give you his international name actually, just to make sure I'm saying the right thing, and that's what he promotes itself on himself
Okay.
under. So yeah, the artist international name is Bradlin, and he does Twitch streaming about his art. He has a very good Instagram page where you can see a lot of his work. So it's Bradlin underscore art, Bradlin with two N at the end, and it's really really good. He pays a lot of attention to details and he cares, and that was the most important for me, is that he cares about being faithful to the culture. um, I, when I first started this project, my main idea was to work only with Korean staff, so Korean illustrators, Korean editors, etc., etc. But the problem is that since I think it's 5 years old now, between 3 and 5 years old now, there's been an explosion in the webtoon industry. They started adapting webtoons to dramas, and it made the webtoon industry just explode. And after that, all the Korean illustrators became really, really expensive. So it's just not doable for an indie developer like me. It's just impossible. So I had to look outside of Korea, and I found, I think I went through 2 or 3 different artists, and it was the most talented and the person who would really go the extra mile to get it right in terms of culture, in terms of Korean designs, etc., etc., etc. So it's really, really good.
Well, that's excellent. I'm
Yeah,
glad to hear it. And yeah, there are some excellent things on this page. Looking at your actual website, the hallofadventures.com.
yeah,
There's some good stuff there. The one with the since it's Korea, I assume they're not torii gates, but the things like torii gates covered in snow. That is
yeah.
super
So
cool.
this one, yeah, I really like it too. It does look too close to Torii Gates, which some people have been complaining about.
Yeah,
I don't know that it will make it in the final in the book, simply because it is true that being so. I just in this case, I just love this design. Torii Gates are beautiful for me because they're very simple. If you look at all the gates in Korea, there's a lot of intricate design in it. There's a lot of um, it feels in some times, in some places, and in some settings too busy. So a Korean gate in front of a temple is excellent because it makes a statement. When you get in front of that gate, you will know right away if it's a big or a small temple. You will know right away what kind of deities or spirits they consider to be important because they will be portrayed in the gate. But for something like what you see on this page, this is supposed to be a shrine uh, that is dedicated to the spirit of winter, and I wanted something simple, and Torii gates provide this simplicity. but it is not Korean, so there's a chance that this image will disappear at some point.
Yeah, which is unfortunate but understandable given the nature of the project. Yeah.
Right. I want to find this is going to be part of the separate research I will do once the Kickstarter finishes and I start all the visual development. I will try and find simpler gates in Korean history. I haven't seen any so far. Everywhere I've been, I haven't seen anything that was simple and that represented like a simple shrine. One of my favorite shrines, and I still haven't been able to go there. It's in Japan. There's one shrine where it's just one torii gate, but it's a gigantic torii gate in the middle of the fields. That's all. That's all it is, and it's huge. And when you look at the photos, it's just very impressive, and it's in the middle of nowhere in the countryside. And you go there, and wow, I really want to see that because it's simple, but at the same time, it's very imposing. Whereas here, it's a lot more intricate in design, which makes it, like I said, a bit too busy sometimes.
Yeah, that trend sounds really cool. Uh, so one last question before we get into
Yep.
to the end of this. How did you get into tabletop gaming?
That was actually a friend of mine invited me because he had a gaming group, and one day he said, "Oh, we're gonna be gaming all weekend, and if you want to come and join." And that was, I think, that was AD&D that was 2E at the time, so AD&D. And then I went there. They helped me create a character. It was an elf ranger because I was fascinated by elves and just wanted to be able to hang out in nature. So that seemed like a good enough motivation at that time. And yeah, so that's what we did. We played for a long time, and it was really cool. But it was not my best experience simply because they didn't really explain to me what was important when creating a character, especially a ranger, which made it a very weak character. So I ended up all I was doing is as soon as there were battles coming up, I would jump in the tree and wait it out, which is boring when that's all that you do. But I love the idea of playing and using your imagination. I love the idea of pen and paper. At the time, there was no cell phone anyway, so it wouldn't have made a difference. But now that's what really attracts me the most is I can put all my electronics away and just play the game. And yeah, that was the first experience, and I fell in love with it quite rapidly, actually.
That's pretty cool. All right. Well, anything else you'd like to bring up before we bring this to an end?
I think we covered it all.
All right.
Covered it quite well.
Well, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you too. Thanks so much.
And for our viewers, have a good night.